Welcome along, fellow time travelers and strange historians. This time around, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite historic photos of John Lennon at his apartment building in New York City. Unfortunately, many of them were taken by amateurs as he was going in and out of the building, but every once in a while, John and Yoko had a professional photographer swing by and take some photos, and so I'm going to show you some of those as well as some of the amateur photos that were taken as well. So, let's get rolling. This photo was taken by professional photographer Bob Gruen. I actually have a few photos from him, and I'm going to show you those right now. So this is John Lennon, obviously, in a Japanese-style white robe and pajamas and no shoes. And that is Sean. So this is 1975. John's hair is pretty long. You can see it up in a ponytail there. You've got the beautiful Dakota apartment building living room. This room right here is actually located on the southeast corner of the building on the 7th floor. And so the direction that John Lennon is facing would be West 72nd Street, and where the photographer is, Bob Gruen, if he turned around, that would be a window overlooking Central Park. That door right there on the far left, that actually goes into one of the bedrooms, which I believe John and Yoko used two of those rooms on that side, overlooking West 72nd Street as their bedrooms. And so that would be one way to get there. And look, you can see a guitar right there on the right-hand side on the carpet. So that's pretty cool. This photo obviously was taken from a different angle, but in the same room. And so you've got the fireplace there on the far left, and then you can see a set of double doors in the corner there going into another room, and you can see a little bit of a window that overlooks Central Park. And then this is John and Yoko and Sean sitting in bed. And this is another angle. I love this photo. This was taken by a gentleman named Brian Hamill. And this is John Lennon wearing a cool little cap. He's got sort of an awesome little jacket there, white shirt. He's got a pin that says Elvis on it. I love his boots, right? So this is, I don't know, 70 something, right? And so you've got those platform shoes. But what's really great about this photograph is that John is on the rooftop of the Dakota apartment building, which is great. So for those who aren't familiar with the Dakota, it's located on the west side, Upper West Side of New York City, corner of West 72nd Street and Central Park West. And that behind him, obviously, is Central Park. And on the other side is the Upper East Side. And you've got that beautiful wrought iron balcony that wraps around the building. Cloudy skies there in New York. And then this is a close-up. And then this is taken a little bit towards the center. You see to the left. In the center of the Dakota on the roof is a pyramidal structure. It's a pretty fascinating area because originally it was for mechanical equipment for the elevators, but also there was space there for storage or for even people to live in. In fact, at the time that John Lennon was living there, there was a resident who had acquired that space and converted it into a pretty awesome apartment. That gentleman's name was Ward Bennett. I've got a lot of good photos of his apartment, so I'll show that another time actually. But anyway, there's John on the roof near the pyramidal structure. And that is him on a ladder going further up the roof. And you can see his really cool boots. This is a cool photo. This was actually taken inside that pyramidal structure. This is the northeast side of that apartment, that enormous window right there, and that's Ward Bennett's desk. And like I said, I will show more images of Ward Bennett's apartment another time. And that's John Lennon leaning against his jukebox in his Dakota apartment building. Once upon a time, there were things called jukeboxes, and you'd load it up with records, and you'd go there and press, I guess, a number or a letter, or a number and a letter, and then it would play the song that you would want to hear. This photo was also taken by Brian Hamill on the same day, and there John is inside of his apartment with some cool frame photos. For those who aren't familiar with the layout of the Dakota apartment building, this is a general idea of what the ground floor looks like. And so you can see the enormous courtyard in the center, and I put 2 circles there to show where the fountains are. And on the left-hand side is West 72nd Street, and you can see the entry to the Dakota right there, dead center, and how you can go from West 72nd Street all the way through into the courtyard. And so I'll talk about the floor plans another time, so just wanted to give you an idea of what that looks like. I just wanted to give you a general idea of the layout of the ground floor. And here is a general layout of the 7th floor where John Lennon lived, and so for the most part, his apartment was located in that bottom left-hand corner. And so you could see the staircase and the elevator, and you would come out, and then towards the bottom, you could see the entry into his apartment. And then that far left corner, that is where John Lennon was photographed holding Sean while sitting in a chair. And you can see just above that, one of the bedrooms, then above that is another bedroom. And then you can see the kitchen on the far right of that apartment. And you can see the access to the service stairs and service elevator. We'll talk more about that another time. I don't know who took this photograph. Not the greatest haircut John Lennon ever had, but this is the entry to the Dakota right there on the right-hand side. You can see the wrought iron gate leading to the porte cochere. And you can see the big beautiful urn over John Lennon's right-hand shoulder. And if John Lennon wasn't standing there, you'd see the sentry box. And so you've got that. So this is West 72nd Street. This is perhaps the most famous photograph of John and Yoko in front of the Dakota apartment building. And you can see it's a black and white photo. And so it makes the Dakota look kind of dark and dreary, and some people say haunted, but none of that's really true. The Dakota is actually a very beautiful building. It's a buff yellow, which actually makes it kind of cheerful, to be honest with you. But I mean, yeah, you had years of dirt and grime accumulating on the building, and so it has been cleaned ever since, but for the most part, it never was a dark and dreary building. It gets kind of a bad rap, mainly because it was featured in Rosemary's Baby and because of eventually what happened to John Lennon in the entryway. But either way, this photo was taken from across Central Park West. I don't know who took this photograph. Obviously a guest, probably not a resident, and that's John Lennon to the left and Yoko to the right, and that's them leaving the Dakota, heading off to West 72nd Street to probably go for a lovely stroll in Central Park, since there's no limousine or cab waiting for them. And across the street is another building called the Majestic. This is a fantastic photo taken by a friend of mine who unfortunately is no longer with us, named Paul Goresh, and I'm going to talk more about Paul in the future, but for this particular video, I'm just going to say that John told Paul that he and Yoko were leaving and to go ahead and take some photographs, and that maybe there would be a chance that he would be able to use that in the future for something. So it was a great opportunity for Paul, who was not a professional photographer, not even an amateur photographer. He was just a fan who would hang around the Dakota to get pictures of John Lennon. Eventually, the two became friendly, but either way, that's John on the right, that's Yoko to the left, and they're leaving the Dakota, and you can see the beautiful sentry box right behind Yoko. In the far left-hand corner, you can see the beautiful stone, an ornate pedestal, and the fantastic evergreen-filled urn on top of it. This is a fantastic photo that was taken in 1980 of John Lennon leaving the Dakota by himself. And you can see how incredibly long his hair was earlier in the year. This was taken in their office on the ground floor, and so that's John Lennon, obviously, and Yoko Ono. And it looks like they've got a cassette deck set up connected to something. And oh, this photo was taken by Bob Gruen. I see right there in the bottom right-hand corner. So good job, Bob. Took a beautiful photo of John and Yoko while John's playing the piano. And John looking rather dapper in his suit and tie, and Yoko wearing a nice jacket. This is a very rare photograph. It was taken in the kitchen of John Lennon's apartment in the Dakota, And so you got John Lennon to the right, and you've got his son from his first marriage. That's Julian Lennon right there. And I assume this photo was taken in 1975, possibly 1976. If anybody knows any better, please let me know in the comments below. But not many photographs of Julian Lennon at the Dakota, and so we are really thankful to have this one, which is pretty cool. There's a great photograph taken by, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Kishin Shiniyama. And that's Yoko to the left, and that's John Lennon to the right. And this was taken towards the end of 1980 and used on the back of the Double Fantasy album. And this photograph taken from another angle, showing Yoko and John about to cross the street. If you don't mind, I'm going to make a quick commentary about this photograph. I don't know what the heck John Lennon was thinking, walking around the streets of New York like this, especially in the 70s. I know this is 1980, but still, he lived there in the 70s, and he walked around like he was just a regular guy. And that just never made any sense to me at all. And I'm going to tell you why. I know a lot of people think, well, he just wanted to be normal, he just wanted to walk around. The fact of the matter is he was too rich and he was too famous. Now let me say, especially in the 1970s, right, or 1980, you had regular people getting mugged, getting attacked, getting shot, getting beaten, getting stabbed, right? And so somebody could have attacked John Lennon and not even have any idea who he was, okay? And it seems to me that one of the benefits of being incredibly wealthy is that you didn't have to subject yourself and don't have to subject yourself to situations like this. I mean, let's be honest. Would you live like this if you were as famous as John Lennon? This is like Elvis walking down the street. And I just don't want to buy into this idea like, well, he just wanted to act like he was normal. He just wanted to be like normal people. No, sorry, he wasn't normal. John Lennon wasn't normal. And by that, I don't mean he was strange. I mean, he was incredibly wealthy and incredibly famous. And sometimes in life, you got to give things up. You just have to. You can't do whatever the heck you want just because you want to do whatever the heck you want. Especially when you're incredibly famous like John Lennon. He had absolutely no business in the world walking around like this. This photo was taken on the ground floor of the Dakota in an apartment that John and Yoko purchased in order to use for their production company and other businesses. And so it said that this is where Yoko would come to work every day, and John would stay upstairs and Yoko would be downstairs taking care of business. And so on the right-hand side, if you look out that window, you can see the courtyard of the beautiful Dakota apartment building. Now, look on the far right-hand corner. You can see that desk right there. Well, check this out. There's the desk. That's pretty cool. I don't know what kind of desk you work on, but chances are it's probably not something like that. So that's a pretty cool photo of Yoko Ono's desk. And looking out that window right there, you could once again see the courtyard to the Dakota. This is a great photo. You know what? I didn't even know about this photo until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. I came across it. I'm like, whoa, hold on here. Where did this come from? This was also taken by Kishin Shiniyama. And let me just tell you a little bit about this. So this is the courtyard to the Dakota. The Dakota is broken up into quadrants, right? And so the Dakota doesn't have one lobby. It actually has 4 separate lobbies. And so what you would do is you would come in off of West 72nd Street, go through the entryway, and then John and Yoko would turn right. And it would lead into this quadrant right there. And then you've got the steps leading up, and you can look underneath the steps, and you could actually see, I don't know if you can tell, but there's actually like glass blocks in order to allow light to penetrate through into the basement. And so you'd go up that steps, right? You'd ascend those steps, go through those beautiful mahogany doors. I've been there, by the way. Fantastic. And then you walk in, and then to the right is an elevator. And then going straight ahead, you've got a staircase, beautiful, ornate staircase with marble along the wall. And then if you turn left, it would lead into a hallway, and that would lead to the apartment that John and Yoko purchased to use as their office. And if you look at that window on the far left-hand corner, that is for their apartment that was used as an office. And then the windows you could see at the ground level, that actually isn't the ground level. That's actually for the basement of the Dakota. And on the right-hand side, that actually was the area that was the kitchen for when the Dakota had a restaurant in the late 1800s and early 1900s. There's another photo taken by Brian Hamill. This is John Lennon sitting in his kitchen. I don't know who took this photo, but that's John in his kitchen. Look at that cool old-fashioned, well, I guess it was pretty modern probably at the time, telephone along the wall. I like the tiles. And then you can look straight ahead and you can see the apartment on the other side of the Dakota's courtyard. This might also be considered to be the most famous photograph of John Lennon at the Dakota. It was taken while he was signing an autograph for the piece of garbage who would later on murder him. So yeah, this photo was taken a handful of hours before John Lennon was murdered, and his murderer is right there on the right hand side, watching John kindly sign his album. So it's a sad photo, right? It's seeing photos like this that make you wish you could travel back in time, yeah? Don't you wish you can kind of travel back in? I mean, look, I know if you travel back in time, there's a zillion things you would do, right? And saving a rock star probably wouldn't be at the top of your list. I'm just saying, if you could travel back in time to this particular moment, you'd probably do something about it, right? Something, somehow, some way, and keep that piece of garbage away from John Lennon. I don't know who took this photograph. Probably an amateur photographer, but I could be wrong about that. And that is John heading into the entry to the Dakota, wearing a pretty cool blue jeans jacket. And this is pulled back a little bit to show Sean right there, and I assume that's Yoko to the left, but I don't really know. This is a fantastic photo taken of John Lennon and Yoko Ono in their office on the ground floor of the Dakota. I don't know about you, but I would love to ask Yoko, or anybody, are all those filing cabinets still there? I mean, in the 70s, right? 1980, right? 1980s. Makes total sense, right? Come on. You got a lot of paperwork, got a lot of stuff, got to file it away. But I wonder if Yoko ever hired anybody to digitize all the paperwork that was in there. Maybe, maybe not. Look how high they are. You need a ladder to actually reach the upper levels of the filing cabinets. Here's another photograph taken inside their office. This is a different room than the one with the filing cabinets. And so that's John reading, and that is Sean next to him. And this is Paul Goresh and John Lennon. And once again, I'm going to talk about Paul Goresh in another video, but yeah, that's him to the left. He's the one who took the photograph, that last known photograph of John Lennon. Legend has it, I mean, I spoke to Paul about it quite a bit. It's a sensitive subject, but he made an incredible amount of money from licensing that photograph. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, it wasn't right for him to make all that money. But you know something? He took the last photograph of John Lennon, and newspapers and magazines and book publishers all around the world wanted to use it. So what was he supposed to do? Let them use his photograph for free so that they could use his photograph to make money? He at least, lost a friend. And John Lennon knew him and was cool with him taking photographs. And so yeah, why shouldn't he make some money off of it? But it had to be a weird thing, right? It's kind of like inheriting money. Have you ever inherited money and you kind of don't want to touch it and you kind of don't want to spend it? Especially if it came from somebody you cared about, right? A mom, a dad, grandparent, whatever. And you feel like it's not mine. It's not my money. I feel weird spending it, right? And so you can imagine that Paul was there that night and he left early, which he had every right to. I mean, he had no idea what was going to happen to John Lennon later, but he left. And then he found out later that night that John was shot. And he actually went to the police with his camera, with his photos, to say, listen, I think I might have a photograph of the killer. Because Paul suspected that it may have been the guy who was there earlier that night. And so Paul's motivation wasn't to make money. It was to try to find the killer. And it was somebody at the police precinct, I think, that said, listen, you need to call the newspaper with this. Don't just give it to us. And so I think the story is that Paul called up a newspaper and they're like, okay, we'll take care of this for you. And thankfully didn't rip him off and got him some kind of licensing agreement, however that works. And then from then forward, Paul made quite a bit of money. But he also immortalized John Lennon being kind enough on his way to a recording studio at night to stop and give an autograph to a stranger. And so, thank goodness for Paul for doing that. I wish there were more photos available of John Lennon at the Dakota, but at this point there simply aren't. And so Yoko or Sean or Elliot Mintz, if you're listening, it sure would be cool to see a lot more photographs of John Lennon. Listen, he was a very famous man, obviously brilliant man, and he still has fans all these years later, even though he died in 1980. And I think it's important that people see photographs of him, and I'm going to tell you why. Many of you probably already know that the reason that I'm so fascinated with the Dakota is because I'm a New Yorker, and my entire life, even as a little boy, right, growing up, teenager, I would walk past the Dakota, and all people were doing all the time were taking photographs of where John Lennon got shot. I never thought it was right. I never thought it was fair. And way too many people just look at it and they associate it with where John Lennon died. And it seems to me that videos like this are important, and maybe more photographs being released by Yoko or John Lennon's estate in the future would be much appreciated, because the Dakota should be celebrated as a place not where John Lennon died, but where John Lennon lived. And so it is my promise to you that if any of those photographs ever become available in the future, you can count on me to go ahead and put together a video about it and show them to you and explain to you the different photographs and where they may be taken and maybe the years and what other information I'm able to garner by looking at it or any information that's provided with them. And so once again, Yoko, Sean, Elliot Mintz, if you're listening, photographs of John Lennon at the Dakota would be awesome, because right now it's pretty thin gruel. There just isn't that much out there, but these are some of my favorites. I hope you enjoyed this. And so this concludes this episode of Historic Photos, showcasing historic photos of John Lennon at the Dakota. Kindly remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Specifically, I'd appreciate it if you could become a member of my channel and or join me on Patreon. You could also leave a super thanks in the comments below. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals, and please don't eat them. They don't like that. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, my fellow time travelers and strange historians, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.